Yeah, yeah. But we have a lot of action going on over here as well. We actually have a match going on. I mentioned it earlier, the match between Fr0zen and Noblord. And their first match of the day, they had a 30-minute long Reno Mage versus Reno Warlock showdown, which was crazy. Noblord ended up taking it with the Reno Warlock in the end. But we're going to jump into game number 2 of this series and check in with these guys and see how they're doing. This is Reno Mage for Noblord and the Pirate Warrior for Fr0zen.
Yeah, a match that we've been seeing kind of become a classic as far as this standard meta is concerned. Fr0zen with Pirate Warrior simply trying to just run over Noblord as quickly as possible before he has any time to get set up. Noblord playing Reno Mage, this deck very much dedicated to simply offsetting the early board position from aggressive decks and then using the ultra-powerful heal from Reno Jackson to try to stabilize the game and win with endgame utility.
Yeah, things to note here. 2 cards that are very indicative of what kind of matchup this is in the opening hand. Patches for Fr0zen and Reno for Noblord. But one of those you are welcoming in the opening hand, and one of them you hate in the opening.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting contrast to legendaries where, Patches and Reno Jackson, certainly 2 of the most powerful legendaries in Standard at the moment. One of them, however, you just never want to draw with Patches. You want it to come shooting out of the cannon at the first pirate you play. But it being in hand means he's operating with effectively 1 less card, and then also that 1 less damage early on.
Mm-hmm. So Noblord, the gig is up. Noblord knows it passes in the opening hand now the Blood Cell Raider has been played. Noblord, watching him in the first match and now watching him here, he's a very expressive player. When things don't go his way, he shows it. And when things go his way, he shows it even more.
Yeah.
So you can see him, just watch his camera in the bottom left every single turn. His options from Discover, his draws off the top. Everything gets reaction out of him, and it's really cool to see his emotion.
Yeah. Something I also love about Noblord, going a complete opposite way of personality, is just the way that he plays the game. He's got such a patient approach, and he's constantly thinking about how his opponent's hand looks based on what they've done already. And he's got a fantastic ability to read into what his opponent's got in hand. And at times, it can come back to bite him. He'll guess a little bit wrong, but when he's guessing right, that guy is a force. He makes such good use of his tools.
Yeah, this matchup in particular is pretty interesting to me because these are the 2 players, probably out of anybody in the whole tournament, that you go sort of next level. We've had a chance to get insight into Fr0zen's mind with some of the interviews that he's done at One Nation of Gamers PAX Finals that he won last year, and also now in the Trinity Series interacting with the rest of his teammates on Luminosity. He's not afraid to bring up weird plays. And when he's in a tournament setting by himself in his own brain, sometimes he does make plays that you don't necessarily see right off the bat. And a lot of times it ends up being a really creative play that gets him out of a tight situation. And Noblord is actually the same way. They both make plays that you look at it on paper and you're like, wow, nobody would ever do that.
Yeah.
Or you look at it and be like, wow, that's dumb. And then he wins the game because he made a play like that. And these are 2 players that have those creative minds.
Yeah, and Ice Block here drawn for Noblord, a tool he very much needs to pick up at this point under a ton of heat and having to rely on this Volcanic Potion to clear out the board. So he knows Fr0zen has got Patches in hand, but really no other way to read the remaining cards. He's hoping that he can just do this and that the pressure is enough. And here you can see, really worried about the burst damage potential.
He's like, no, Leroy, please.
Woo, the fist pump as Reno Jackson's going to come online, and this looks like a huge stabilizing tool. I mean, Fr0zen's got Frothing Berserker on board. He's got another one in hand, so I still think the position is a little bit shaky for Noblord, but a couple key pickups. I'm thinking maybe Flame Strike, Frost Nova. Both of those would be fantastic for Noblord right now as he goes back to 30.
Yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily a good position for him because that's a Blood Cell Cultist pickup as well, which means this weapon's going to continue being online for Fr0zen. So now Noblord, he's back to praying.
This is the Flame Strike prayer.
Yeah.
We hit the first one, but 2 Frothing Berserkers are terrifying. For 3 mana, that card offers an enormous amount of damage potential. And I can promise you Fr0zen is thinking the exact same thing. Please just don't draw Flame Strike.
Yeah. Yeah, Fr0zen at this point, a lot of times as Pirate Warrior, you have to be in a situation where you have to have the mindset, well, I have to act like my opponent doesn't have the cards that beat me. And so, you just have to not respect Reno, not respect Frost Nova, not respect all of those things. So Noblord option here to Harrison Jones to draw 3. Oh, no, not quite. Can draw 1 card. I'm sorry. Thought the N'Zoth's first mate was already down.
He's just under so much pressure right now. Like, I look at this and I wonder, where does Noblord actually get out of this game? I mean, the Fr0zen Berserkers are terrifying at the moment. All of his minions look so much weaker because that's in play. He's got to find a way to clear out this entire board position if he's going to win. And after the Reno Jackson's been used, when you're still fighting for the board, that's a losing position.
Yeah, so it's going to be Ice Block Polymorph. So that Ice Block could buy him enough time to get to a place where he can board clear and then follow that up with an Alexstrasza to bring himself back up to 15. But Fr0zen is putting on the heat right now, and his first mate's going to come down. Also has Fiery War Axe to back it up. And looking at, unless AoE comes in the hand here for Noblord,
Flame Strike.
Block Pop.
Frost Nova might be good enough as well. I mean, he does have Alexstrasza in hand. Harrison Jones will draw him 3 cards at this point, and he's got to find a spot to be able to clear this board and to restabilize with Alexstrasza. So Noblord under a ton of heat right now, and his options are basically draw with Arcane Intellect or draw with the Harrison Jones. If he draws with Harrison Jones, he's only got 3 mana left to operate. He's relegated to pretty much Frost Nova in this spot.
Let's see the pickups. Harrison Jones, 3 cards. Water Elemental, Azure Drake, Forbidden Flame.
Ooh, these are not good pickups.
Well, he can Forgotten Torch and Forbidden Flame are both 3 damage in this scenario. So none of them take out either the Fr0zen Berserker or the Cultist.
And the problem with pulling damage off the board right now is every single time Noblord invests damage into a minion, that Fr0zen Berserker gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger. It doesn't stop, and this looks like it's going to go downhill from here.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to ping. That's a little bit interesting. I would think that he might want to use Arcane Intellect here to draw, because ping doesn't take any points of damage off the board.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to clear the board position down and actually hope that after this turn from Fr0zen that he's going to be able to trade into the Fr0zen Berserker and then also drop his Alexstrasza down. And here, we actually didn't mention this. Fr0zen is the one player in the tournament who's using the Finja Warrior. And so this package has cut Mortal Strike, it's cut Leroy Jenkins, and instead it's got Finja, 2 Bluegill Warrior, and 2 Murloc War Leader to help compound the pressure as you move towards the mid stage.
I don't believe in this deck. I think it was Purple who was one of the players that came up with this list, and was one of the players that Fr0zen took inspiration from. But Purple didn't even bring it.
Yeah, well, he's put Finja in every single list you can imagine. Like, pick a deck in the format, Purple has put the Finja package in there at some point. I actually recall him telling me about a Reno build he put the Finja package in. The idea was to attack with Finja, get the extra Murlocs, and then suddenly the Reno effects are active.
But
that one didn't work out.
But the guy who made the deck didn't even bring it. What does that tell you as the player who did bring it? And Frozen's the only one. Water Warrior.
Yeah, it's been dubbed Water Warrior due to the additional fish in the deck, but that's going to do it. Fr0zen just so much pressure through Reno Jackson. One of the best things you can do to combat that card is to simply have board presence moving into the Reno Jackson turn.
Yeah.
It's what you've dubbed PRD, post-Reno damage.
Ooh.
If you can deliver enough post-Reno damage, you're often in a similar spot. And a lot of times you can effectively turn Reno Jackson into simply Frost Nova.
Yeah, it's the most satisfying thing in the world. Your opponent plays Reno, they think they're in the lead, they fist bump on camera, and then you just smack them for 50 with a Fr0zen Berserker. It's a great feeling, but we're actually going to get into Game 3 here momentarily of this series. It's all tied up 1-1, so we'll see as we jump in who's going to be able to pull ahead in the lead in this series. Noblord on Arena Mage, so it's Arena Mage Mirror that we have here for Game number 3. These can be pretty intense, so buckle up.
A little bit of differences in these two lists, it looks like. For Noblord, of course, we saw the Harrison Jones. We saw the copy of Water Elemental starting to become pretty standard in the Reno Mage builds, but he has no Pyroblast in terms of endgame combo damage, and no Inkmaster Solia for big tempo turns. If you look at Fr0zen's side, very similar list, but he's got Ethereal Conjurer, a la the Pavel inclusion. He loves to play that card, it seems. So that extra card creation give you a little bit of advantage. Still no Pyroblast on Fr0zen's side, but he does have Inkmaster Solia. So given the minor differences here, no Pyroblast on either side, where does this match really boil down to?
Ethereal Conjurer allows you to pick up a lot of value, similar to Cabal Courier in that regard. But a lot of this comes down to, allocation of resources. A lot of it comes down to, how much can you extend onto the board into board clears? How many things do you think you can hold on to? Understanding your win conditions as the game goes on, whether or not you're the aggressor or whether or not you have to take a more defensive position in the game, and understanding it from there. Big thing here, Fr0zen gets a Burgly Bully online, which means that he's going to get some coins. Noblord has the potential here to force an overdraw from Fr0zen if he uses. Actually, he doesn't even have 2 spells to use.
Yeah, this is always kind of an awkward position once the opponent plays Burgly Bully. The reason the coins are so important is because of Archmage Antonidas. Every extra coin represents an extra fireball towards the end of the game, and coupled with Archmage Antonidas. So if Noblord's not careful, he could just simply give too much damage over to Fr0zen where the long game is concerned. It typically does not end in the first 10 turns where a Reno Mage Mirror is concerned. So here, it looks like he just wants to build board tension with the Emperor Fr0zen and look to kill this via minion combat. This is, I think, a very conservative play for Noblord to not give up that extra damage, and also a little bit risky here. Is Emperor Fr0zen not the greatest Emperor Fr0zen I've ever seen? Not discounting too much important stuff, but for Fr0zen, he's the one who's got initiative now. He's got the Burgly Bully, and means he can just apply pressure. Anytime he sees a combination of spells here, he's sitting good. And speaking of extra spells and endgame resources, that is one of the finest.
The Nexus Champion Sarad comes out. You guys don't know what it is. Every time you use your hero power, you get a random spell. Any
Not
spell.
from your class.
Not from your class, a random spell. The sky's the limit when Nexus Champion Sarad's concerned. So
ranges from Totemic Might all the way up to Pyroblast.
yeah. But Noblord now has to make the decision. Nexus Champion Sarad in such a value-oriented matchup, or what many times comes down to a value-oriented matchup, you can't give your opponent one of the highest value cards in the game, a free spell every turn that you can't account for. And so he has to kill that and maybe even give 2 coins over to his opponent with that Burgly Bully if he has to use another spell to clear off. So
yeah, that's the important thing here too, is the 1-2 punch from Fr0zen having two different card advantage engines sitting in play. Noblord can only handle 1 a turn. He chooses to answer Nexus Champion Sarad. Certainly the minion, I think, that provides more value because Burgly Bullies is a bit more circumstantial. It also helps him continue to identify the range from Fr0zen. If he's just playing into a blind range of spells, it's much harder for Noblord to navigate. Again, hand reading, very much a big facet of his game.
yeah, and so now Noblord really has to, find how to deal with this well. Fr0zen has the Brand Kazakis combination in his hand. He doesn't need to find room for it. That's the thing. Brand Kazakis, it refills your hand back up with 2 more cards with both of the potions. But it is, one of the main tools where you can win this matchup. If you can get a proactive 1 down, so imagine if, Fr0zen goes ahead and brands Kazakis next turn, and the following turn he can actually coin into a potion. If he gets a potion that refills his board with, the Ichor of Undeath, what summons 3 minions that have died, and picks up, Burgly Bully again, Nexus Champion Sarad again, and, these big minions that he's already played so far in this game, he's going to be in a great spot.
Look at this sacrifice that Noblord's offering as well. I mean, the Burgly Bully has done a massive amount of work. He just gets Azure Drake on board to try to mitigate the pressure as much as possible. Fr0zen taking this opportunity to get Emperor Fr0zen down, and his is looking so much better than Noblord's was. Noblord's was a really defensive Emperor Fr0zen, just trying to answer the board. Here, Fr0zen's is requiring attention at this point, and he's got Brand Kazakis to lead into it. So he's discounted that mana, and he's going to be looking at 2 potions very soon. Now, the Reno Jackson being picked here can matter, but again, no Pyroblast on either side. So the damage race, not anywhere close at this point. Noblord's still having to fight for board.
That Dirty Rat, pretty good, but he would have much preferred to see that Brand Kazakis. Now, one thing to know, I want to talk about that Burgly Bully again, just for a few moments. There's 2 times a Burgly Bully is an MVP. 1, when it gives you a bunch of coins, you can turn them into a bunch of fireballs. And 2, this situation where it essentially just made Noblord's turns weird.
Yep.
For many turns in a row and forced inefficient trades. That Burgly Bully did some work, and Noblord is pretty much behind in game and on board because of the fact that Burgly Bully came down, not because of he gave him so many coins. So
and now he's also falling way behind in card advantage. Double potions here for Fr0zen. In this matchup, you typically fetch the 10-cost potions. You're looking for the juice. Resurrect 3 minions, give them all +6 health. The fact that Mage operates on a damage basis for its removal means that the additional health makes it so hard for Noblord to answer. If that potion comes up, Fr0zen is in massive favorite.
Yeah, and Fr0zen is actually a player who tends to, in a lot of matchups actually, he picks double 10 here, but I've seen Fr0zen pick 10-5 with Brand Kazakus a lot of times. A lot of times it's against like Reno Warlock or maybe some faster decks where you need to have a little bit more flexibility. But Fr0zen's one of the players that I've actually seen do that the most out of a lot of players, just because he likes to have more options and more flexibility with his cards.
He likes to get a lot of advantage that turn as well, but this is spelling a lot of how far ahead he's been. And the Faceless Manipulator drop for Noblord not exactly helping the cause here. With a 3/3, one of the weaker 5-cost minions you can actually get from Fireland's Portal. So Fr0zen just a wealth of options at his fingertips. It's going to be difficult for Noblord to recover this game. Needs to find Kazakus, I think.
Needs to find Kazakus, but if he does find Kazakus, look at his swing potential. He's got Brand, Kazakus, and then he can Manic Soulcaster the Kazakus back into his deck to have 3 Kazakus over the course of the game.
Yeah, the problem with that is if he puts 2 Kazakus in the deck, it means that the Reno Jackson's not active until he draws one of those other 2 copies. So that's something for him to think about as well, should that card come up.
Oh, it's 4 Kazakus. Kazakuses.
Because you get 2 immediately and then 2 later on.
Kazamakuses.
And here, Fr0zen utilizing the Shatter that the Babbling Book found. So not a ton of benefit for him, but anything to just keep the pressure rolling and keep the turns awkward for Noblord. You know, providing objectives for your opponent does also provide disruption. They have to play their turns differently. Ideally, you would just play your strongest card and bludgeon your opponent to death with it. But forcing your opponent to answer things can certainly lead to some very advantageous positions. And I imagine one of these potions is getting launched fairly soon. That Roaring Torch may change things.
Yeah. That's actually a ton of damage that he has going on there. He can... can't see the potions. One of those potions says gain 10 armor on it. I can see that for sure. But it's kind of funny that the Reno Mage Mirror has become, you know, a matchup where you try and make your opponent's turns awkward.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful, you know?
A lot of what Control's about is just making them have difficult decisions.
Isn't that Hearthstone's motto? Deceptively simple, insanely awkward? Oh, it's fun. I'm sorry. It's fun.
Those are kind of the same
insanely
thing.
Fun.
If you're me and TJ, those awkward is the same thing as fun. Just like right now.
Awkward.
I'm having a blast.
All right, well, back in the game, a little bit of a slow turn here for Fr0zen,
Yeah,
but...
Summon, add 3 random
Jiraxis
to your hand was one of the options. And honestly, I've seen that come into effect a lot when I'm playing the Reno Mage matchups. The extra demon can sometimes be insurmountable if you can force your opponent's burn spells to just be hitting your minions constantly and stifle the pressure. Those extra 3 demons can be the difference between winning and losing the game.
Yeah, Fr0zen actually going up on a turn where he's 1 damage off of lethal. He does have a Frostbolt in his deck. I believe that would be enough. Oh, spell damage! That's Street Trickster! He has enough!
The Street Trickster, 0/7 for 3 mana. One of the demons that came from the Kazakus potion. And you can see Noblord. It's so important for him to be able to know what his opponent has in hand. And off these random effects, these are not effects that you're going to run into very often in practice. And here, Noblord had not accounted for that additional damage, the extra demons being the kicker in this match.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought that was the unlicensed Apothecary, the 3-mana demon that, you know, is a 5/5 that you take damage for your hero whenever you summon a demon. But that's a neutral. Street Trickster is actually one of the neutral demons, which is kind of cool in addition to the set recently. So, you know, Fr0zen getting some use out of it. But I wish I have game number 4 ready for you guys, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Fr0zen now, match point, 1 game away from securing the series for himself, and the only deck he has left remaining is that aggro Shaman.
Yeah, this is a matchup that, to me, is really interesting. You think of any of the Shaman builds, and you imagine them getting off on the ground very quickly and starting to punish their opponent with lots of early damage. But oftentimes, the Shaman matchup boils down to allocation of resources. The player who's able to use their cards wiser in the early game comes away with the last threat. And that last threat means your opponent is left having to answer your minion and the next card you draw turn after turn. That usually leads to just repetitive damage over the course of the game and makes up the early damage that you expended using weapons and making proper trades while your opponent doesn't have the favorable ones.
So this means that Noblord actually banned away the Reno Warlock from Fr0zen.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, he's got plenty of decks in his lineup that just don't match up well versus Reno Warlock. You know, he's got his own Reno Warlock that's playing a low curve. He's got Reno Mage with Harrison Jones, no Pyroblast. He's got Control Warrior with Elise being his one big card. It's just nothing he has really operates very well against it because he's targeting something else. The Control Warrior just has almost no chance to beat it. The Reno Mage going to struggle, and of course, again, his Reno Warlock not built for the mirror match.
Yeah, it's the combo version of Reno. It's so a little bit greedier of a deck from Fr0zen, so that one can be definitely hard to beat. So a little bit of a pivot. It also might mean that he feels a little bit more confident against Warrior and Shaman with his low curve decks, but it also could mean that he doesn't respect the Warrior.
Could be that as well.
The Water Warrior.
It's already picked up a win.
It has.
It's a 100% win rate in this tournament thus far.
Drew one Murloc, and that was on the turn that he killed him. So,
yeah, Noblord going to choose to play this slow, and I think rightfully so. Very much indicating that Noblord understands the matchup and is likely to approach it from a control perspective. The attack on the Spirit Claws from Fr0zen oftentimes will mean that he's got some way to keep swinging this board. Sometimes it just means he's attacking Small-Time Buccaneer twice. But here, when Noblord rolls his hero power, either Healing Totem or the Stoneclaw Totem will protect that Small-Time Buccaneer, so buying value immediately with his hero power.
Now, this is not a terrible situation for Noblord, even though he's down in the series. He has, this mirror matchup is going to be the biggest one for him. But if he goes into game number 5, he has his Reno Mage versus a Shaman, which has traditionally been a good matchup, especially if you have a low curve Reno, which seems to be a little bit of the plan here for Noblord to target the more aggressive decks with his Reno lineup. So I feel like he'd have a good matchup if he can get through this one.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an awkward spot too here. Fr0zen wisely coining out the Small-Time Buccaneer in this position means that Noblord isn't free to play Tunnel Trog and the Maelstrom Portal. Oftentimes it means his Tunnel Trog will be biting the dust. So if that's the case, he also doesn't want to overload going into turn number 5. So if he's going to play an overload card, it probably needs to be this turn. But he's got to clear the board position. He's got to try to get something rolling. So Tunnel Trog here just going to be his best bet.
Yeah, this matchup is a lot of players think the aggro matchup's all about just beating your opponent down, but this one and even Pyro Warrior mirrors really come down to a lot of value at times.
Yes,
they're huge value matches. A lot of times in Shaman versus Shaman, you don't see very much face damage until pretty late in the game because it's all about which player can take control of the board first and utilizing your resources in a way that gives you more value than your opponent out of your cards. The further a Tunnel Trog goes, the better situation going to be.
Look at Noblord's reaction to the life tap from Fr0zen. Fr0zen is now very far ahead in this game. When it comes to a resource battle, he's got a generator. It's not simply as just he's got the board, but he has that as well. So Fr0zen at this point, this could be an insurmountable lead. Noblord has to just draw lights out from this point. And honestly, the Jade Claws might be enough to do it. Starts taking out minions here, gets a minion of his own, and he's got Feral Spirit for the turn after. So the Azure Drake not coming online for quite a while. That would be his ideal scenario, but this will have to do.
Fr0zen's going to follow this up with Feral Spirits of his own and Aya Black Pauldron. That's not great for now because he's going to essentially miss a turn unless he draws a 3-drop or below because of the overload. But Aya is really tough to deal with. It trades up with just about everything, and it's almost impossible to remove. So it's always gonna, connect for some amount of damage.
Yeah, and just look at the way the turns are panning out here. I mean, typically the first player who gets Feral Spirits down into an uncontested board takes a large lead because the defending player has to risk playing their own Feral Spirit in the face of Maelstrom Portal, in the face of Flame Tongue Totem, in the face of extra weapons or extra minions being down. So in any way you slice it, Noblord is in trouble when Fr0zen chooses to remove this Totem Golem. Now, he's got everything rolling his way.
Now this feels terrible to play Feral Spirits because Flame Tongue Totem just destroys you in this situation.
Yep.
He's already used his Maelstrom Portal, so he's got no way to deal with that sort of incremental damage.
Now, the one thing that he's got going for him is that there's only one copy of Maelstrom Portal in Fr0zen's deck, so he's already seen that. But this reload is just so good. Able to wipe out one of the Feral Spirits immediately, continue to attack, and turn after turn, Fr0zen just going to life tap. If Noblord cannot find a way to start matching this board position, and that's a way to match the board position.
Fr0zen...
And he's overloaded going into turn 6, so Aya's not coming down.
Yeah, so this actually this trade was a little bit interesting. This actually plays better into Maelstrom Portal than the other one.
Yeah, his read is that it's just not present. Noblord certainly would have used the Maelstrom Portal.
Yeah, I suppose.
I think in some of these turns. He had such good setup for it.
It's almost the same exact outcome both ways. This just plays better if there's no Maelstrom Portal present. So if he had traded the other way, where he had traded in the rest of the Sir Finley and left one of his Feral Spirits at 3 health, Maelstrom Portal plus the attack from the Jade Claws would have still cleared off the board. Just this way, he has the potential, should there not be a Maelstrom Portal, to have an extra 1/2 on the board that he can use to trade in the future.
Yeah, and Fr0zen, hand's starting to get a little bit clunky now. Flame Wreath, Jade Lightning, Aya. I mean, this is 1 card a turn he's operating on. This deck loaded with low-cost cards. It wants to operate by playing 2 cards a turn. He hasn't had that liberty thus far, and now Noblord's sticking Azure Drake to the board. The pressure starting to mean something here. He's also got Lava Burst and the extra swing of Jade Claws. Did he just turn this completely around?
Is it going to be enough? That's the big question, because Fr0zen, if he sticks a third on the board, it might be tough. And Noblord's operating on 1 card a turn, where Fr0zen's operating on potentially 2 cards a turn. So we could definitely see a close race here. Right now, there's a Lightning Bolt pickup.
It's 11 damage. And Thing from Below, that's something else that I forgot to touch on here. Noblord running a little bit more top end in his build. He's decided to cut Flame Wreath faces in favor of the defensive option for Thing from Below. And now 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 damage available for Noblord on this turn. But if he simply flings all of that at Fr0zen's face, does he get out of the game safely at this point? He can wipe out that life tap, but then he's given up every resource.
He can find a middle ground here and play the Lava Burst to hit the face and Thing from Below, but that doesn't set up for release. He still has a point off of damage.
I think he wants a surprise burst.
Yeah, either surprise burst or just keep playing the board control game.
Which I think it's board control at this point. If he lands Lightning Bolt on Tunnel Trog, on the Totem Golem, or if he just decides to use his board, Thing from Below's not contested directly, and that's super important for Noblord right now. He needs this 5 damage to connect next turn. And given the current board state, that means Fr0zen's got to draw something.
Maybe a pass. All right, so surprise burst it is. Fr0zen's got to have the read that that's just straight up burst damage.
That Lava Burst, a necessary draw for Fr0zen at this point. Answers the Thing from Below, gets Big Papa down.
And he understands, made the read that there's burn in the hand, so taking out the Spell Power Totem.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 damage available for Noblord, and that's without a Wrath of Air Totem. Hello, game number 5.
Yeah, that one, even though Life Tap gave him the value, Fr0zen picked up all of his top end in the first few taps. He picked up Eye of Blackpaw, the Flame Wreath Faceless, and Jade Lightning. All cards that don't really become playable when they're overloaded and don't have the mana to work with. So
that's something to really think about in that matchup too. If that had been Thing from Below, might it have been a different matchup. If he hadn't drawn so many clunky cards, would it have been a different matchup? The thing here is that Noblord, once he sees Life Tap, it's so important for him to just draw a string of burn spells, and that's exactly what happened. That was his 1 out to the game, I think.
All right, well, we're going to see game number 5 is going to be starting in just a few moments here. It's going to be Reno Mage for Noblord versus the Shaman from Fr0zen. So traditionally been considered a pretty good matchup for Reno Mage, but as we all know, Shaman at the moment, one of the, if not the strongest decks in the game, can take wins against just about everything.
Yes, it certainly can, and a lot of that just boils down to the early draws here as we get into game number 1. And Sir Finley into Life Tap on turn 1 is certainly what Fr0zen wants to see. This is actually the best opening that he can possibly have. He's got a pair of Tunnel Trogs next turn, and he's got Feral Spirit. This is actually the best opener that he can have versus Noblord's Reno Mage.
This is huge. There's nothing that can really answer this aside from like Frostbolt into Forgotten Torch, and then you're still dealing with Feral Spirits, and you're still dealing with the one damage return from Sir Finley, and you're still dealing with the Life Tap, which is giving him more resources. This is an incredible opening, and Noblord currently doesn't have Reno Jackson. He doesn't have Kazakis. He doesn't have some of these tools that you so desperately want in this matchup.
Yeah, he's just going for the Forgotten Torch here. He's got to try to find a way to stem the bleeding. And this is going to go downhill very quickly. No AoE in hand. Oftentimes, Volcanic Potion and Blood Mage, one of the ways that you can clear this board. No Kazakus, as you mentioned. Harrison Jones not online for several more turns, and he's under similar pressure that he was in the Pirate Warrior game. Arcane Blast and Hero Power to wipe out this Tunnel Trog. Now he's clocked for 5 a turn, perhaps more alongside the Jade Claw, and no defensive options left.
As the board builds up, it also starts to become a question of, well, do I even win the game if I draw Reno? Because I don't have things to stabilize the board. So, well, this is an interesting thing. Fr0zen has to make the decision, do I keep pushing damage with Jade Claws, or do I tap and make sure that I open up next turn to be able to play Azure Drake?
Yeah, I think given what he's seen so far from Noblord, this is going to be the go-ahead for the Jade Claws here. He's got plenty of weapons in his deck. He'll need turns to unlock those. If he life taps and, say, finds another weapon here, suddenly he gets punished for that. He's got Azure Drake coming in a couple turns as well, so his card economy won't be hurting. I think the most important thing for him right now is just to continue to keep the heat on Noblord. Any small misstep of that will lead to giving Noblord an opportunity to come back.
I definitely like the point that you're making about keeping on the pressure and forcing Noblord to maybe use resources a little bit inefficiently, panicking maybe perhaps to...
This might have to be Arcane Intellect and just hope that he draws the right stuff. I mean, Bran is not enough of a defensive option, and those are poor draws.
Yeah, Dirty Rat against Shaman can sometimes be fantastic and can sometimes be absolutely terrible. A lot of times you can't really afford to use it because if you pull out a Flame Wreath Faceless, you're pretty much dead.
Yeah, I mean, even in this situation, just Azure Drake would be a nightmare for Noblord. So the Dirty Rat, a great option if your opponent doesn't have a minion in hand, but even still here, it is just so much damage. Fr0zen now has so many 1-health minions on board. Hero Power has effectively been stripped away. He's got Burn from hand. He's got all the card draw that he could need in the world. Noblord, a handful of utility minions.
He looks stressed. You can see him throwing up his hands.
I mean, he may not even have time to play Reno Jackson, even if he drew it.
Even if he drew it, yeah, he is just dead. He's just going to hope that nothing comes out of this Dirty Rat, and Azure Drake is going to spell the end for him. I don't know if he's dead on board. He can ping off 2 damage, which leaves 6.
Yeah, Maelstrom Portal, Lightning Bolt, and then 2, 4.
He's
6,
not dead on
8,
board.
9, 10. Yeah, I mean, there's 10 damage pushing from Fr0zen the following turn. The Azure Drake's going to be able to attack.
Yeah.
That's just it. He would have to hope that Fr0zen experiences a tsunami or an earthquake at this point. But Fr0zen, the incredible start versus Noblord, he's going to run away with this series 3-2.
Yeah, an incredible series to watch. Both of these players, maybe not favorites as far as like star power goes. Fr0zen is on the prediction board. Noblord was at the Last Call Invitational. So
was Fr0zen as well.
So was Fr0zen.
Yeah.
So both these players, definitely players to watch as we move forward through these Swiss rounds.
Yeah, I mean, 2 big players matching up in round number 1. It is really something when you have these guys going at it. Game number 1 between these two was just a slugfest back and forth. Jiraxis was in play for, I don't know, maybe 6-7 turns, it felt like, before Noblord finally took it. But those two matching up in round 1, I mean, that's got to feel bad for one or the other. But that's the nature of Swiss. You're going to play strong opponents occasionally in round 1, and one of you now back against the wall. They got to win out.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that's an indicator of what's to come as far as the America's Winter Playoffs is concerned. Round 1 is actually, pretty close to coming to a close. Let's go ahead and check back in with Dan and Brian Kibler over on the main set. How'd you guys enjoy that match?